He looked at me for exactly 3 seconds. Not longer, not shorter. Exactly as long as decency allowed. Then he turned away and became again what he was supposed to be. My boss. Someone else's husband. A man from a different world. But those 3 seconds, I felt them physically, like someone had drawn a finger slowly down my spine. The hand was already gone. The feeling stayed. My name is Ella Morgan. I was 26 when this story began. I had just gotten the job of my dreams. And on the very first day, I already knew I was making the biggest mistake of my life. His name was Adam Cole, CEO, 41 years old, married for 12 years, 2 children, a spotless reputation, and he looked at me like I was a problem he would have to solve, or a problem he would have to avoid. I still don't know which. Maybe he didn't either. They hired me as senior analyst at Cole & Partners in September. I remember that day in detail. Gray, rainy Monday. The smell of coffee and fresh paint. New heels that already hurt. A receptionist named Jenna with a smile that never reached her eyes. "Mr. Cole is on a call," she said. "Please wait here." I waited 15 minutes, then 20. I sat on the white sofa in the white lobby and thought about walking out and telling them I'd changed my mind. Then the door opened. He was taller than I expected, dark hair, slightly longer than typical for a CEO, with gray at the temples, a gray suit that fit perfectly, not a single crease, and his gaze, sharp, assessing, completely unreadable, not cold. That's important. Not cold, focused, like he was always thinking about something important, and you had simply entered the field of that thought. "You're Ella Morgan," he said, not a question, a statement. "Yes." He picked up my resume folder from Jenna's desk, opened it to the first page, closed it. "Stanford, 2 years at McKinsey. Why did you leave?" "I wanted to build something, not just analyze what others had built." A pause. He looked at me with that same gaze. "Good," he said. "Welcome to the team." He didn't smile, just turned and left. Jenna leaned toward me once he'd disappeared. He never says good at a first interview. Never. I looked at the closed door. I didn't know then whether to be glad about that or not. The first 2 months, I did everything right. Adam Cole was the best boss I'd ever had, and that was the first problem. He was fair, precise. He never raised his voice, never diminished anyone. When I made mistakes, he explained why they were mistakes without venom. When I did good work, he said so directly and without exaggeration. "Good work on the Wellington report, Morgan." 3 words. From him. It sounded like a standing ovation. On his desk, there was a photograph. A beautiful woman, 2 children, maybe 7 and 9, a lake somewhere in the mountains, a family that looked like a family from a magazine. Not fake, just right. I looked at that photograph every time I walked into his office. Deliberately, intentionally. It was like cold water. Brief, clear. This is reality. That worked for 2 months. Then came a late Tuesday in November. Everyone had left by 6. I stayed. Deadline on a project that wouldn't add up. Office empty, quiet. Only my monitor and the streetlights outside the window. I didn't hear him come out of his office. "You're still here?" His voice in the silence sounded unexpectedly close. I startled, turned around. He was standing 2 steps away. No jacket, sleeves rolled to the elbows. For the first time in 2 months, not perfectly assembled, just a person. Tired, late evening in an empty office. Something shifted in me.
And this is where the most dangerous part of any story begins. When a person hasn't done anything yet, but you already realize that something inside you has changed forever.
"The numbers don't add up," I said and nodded at the screen. "3rd column." He came closer, leaned toward the monitor. I smelled his cologne, dark, warm, slightly woody. Here, he pointed out. You're using the wrong comparison base. His hand was a few centimeters from mine. I wasn't supposed to think about that. I thought about it. Thank you, I said. He straightened up, looked at me. Not 3 seconds this time. Longer. Go home, Morgan. This can wait until morning. He left. I looked at my hands, thought about the distance of a few centimeters, thought about how a few centimeters is a very small distance and a very large one at the same time. December, the company holiday party. I didn't want to go, but Jenna said Adam notices who shows up to these things, team spirit and all that. I wore a black dress, simple, with a high neck. Nothing that could be misinterpreted. Even alone with myself, I was honest about why I chose every detail. I arrived, had 1 glass of champagne, talked to colleagues, everything normal, everything professional, everything right. Adam was standing at the other end of the room, next to him, his wife, Victoria Cole. In real life, she was even more beautiful than in the photograph. Tall, easy in her movements. She was laughing at something someone had said, lightly, like a person who has always felt at home everywhere. Adam stood beside her, held his glass, looked out at the room, until he saw me. Something changed in his face, something small, barely perceptible. He looked away within a second, but I saw it. Later, at the coat check, I felt someone standing close. You're leaving early, Adam said quietly. I didn't turn immediately. Took a second. Early start tomorrow. Understood. A pause. Excellent work this quarter, Morgan. I finally looked at him. He was standing closer than the conversation required, maybe because the room was loud, maybe not. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Adam, he said quietly for the first time, in 3 months. The first time. I took my coat, turned to leave. Ella, also the first time. I stopped, didn't turn around. Merry Christmas, he said. 3 ordinary words. I don't know why they sounded like something else. I stepped outside. December air, cold and clean. I stood by the entrance for a minute, telling myself to get it together. I got it together. Until January, that worked. January. A conference in Chicago. 3 days. He took me and 2 senior analysts. First day. Business meetings, dinner with clients, a hotel overlooking frozen Lake Michigan. Everything structured, everything professional, everything right. Second day evening. The clients canceled dinner. Colleagues went to the hotel bar. They invited me. I said I was tired. I sat in the lobby with my laptop. Quiet, warm. Outside, Chicago January, dark and windy. He came out of the elevator, saw me, paused for a second. Didn't go with the others? No, neither did you, I noted. Neither did I, he agreed. He sat in the chair across from me, opened his laptop. We worked in parallel for nearly an hour. It was strangely comfortable, like we had long known how to share a space. Then the menu arrived. He ordered dinner, automatically for 2, without asking me. I didn't object. Then the laptops closed. And we talked. Not about work, about books. It turned out we had both been rereading the same essay on urban architecture that neither of us knew anyone else who had read. About Japan. He had lived 2 years in Tokyo. I had always wanted to go. About why he had chosen this business and when he knew it was his. He spoke differently than in the office. Slower. Without that compressed efficiency I was used to from him. Sometimes. He smiled. I realized that in 4 months, I had never seen him smile genuinely. This was a different smile, quiet, from the eyes. At some point, around 1 a.m, he looked at me and said, You're not what I thought when I hired you. What did you think? Brilliant and closed off. He tilted his head. You can be closed off. You know how. That's professionalism. No, he said calmly. That's protection. I looked at him. He wasn't smiling when he said it, just stating a fact. And you? I asked. Are you closed off? A long pause. I'm married, Ella. He said it evenly, without apology, without explanation, just as a fact that exists, that we both know. I know, I said. Silence. I should go to bed, he said finally. Yes. He stood, took his laptop, made one step, stopped. Tonight, he didn't finish. I know, I said again. He left. I stayed in the lobby for another hour, looked at the chair where he had been sitting. I told myself nothing had happened. We had dinner and talked. That was all. But I also knew exactly that something had happened and that nothing would be like before, because now I knew how he smiled for real, and he knew my closeness was protection. We both knew too much. We returned to the office. Everything became like before, on the surface. Mr. Cole, Morgan, professional distance, 3 weeks. 3 weeks we both acted like Chicago hadn't happened. I thought about him every day. I was angry at myself for it, and still thought about him. He looked Exa, slowly walked to my desk, stood beside me, not across, beside. I shouldn't say what I'm about to say. My heart, literally, a beat I felt physically. Then don't, I said quietly. He looked at me for a long time, then slowly shook his head. Too late, he said. I'm already saying it. Silence. Since December, he said, and his voice became quieter and steadier, the way it does when someone says the most important thing without decoration. Since that evening at the coat check, maybe earlier, I think about you every day. I tried to stop. I can't. I don't know what to do with this, and I know it's not fair to you, but I can't stay silent for another 3 weeks. I looked at him. There were many words in my head, the right words about why this was impossible, about his family, about work, about doors that are better left unopened. I know, I said. You understand what I'm saying?
And you know what's strangest about moments like this? Nobody says anything truly dramatic. There's no beautiful music, no perfect lines, no cinematic magic. Just two people standing in silence, realizing that after this conversation, life will never be the same again. That's how stories usually begin, the ones people later regret, or can never forget.
Yes. Silence. What do you want to do with this? He asked. It was an honest question. No pressure, no expectation. Just asked. I looked at him for a long time, thought about the photograph on his desk, about 2 children by a lake, about 12 years, thought about Chicago, about the lobby, about the conversation until 1 a.m, about how he smiles from his eyes, thought about how right decisions are sometimes the most painful ones, and how the pain of a right decision is a different quality than the pain of a wrong one. Adam, I said, you're married. Yes. And I work for you. Yes. This shouldn't. I know, he said quietly. Long silence. But it already exists, he said. Whatever we decide, it already exists. I stood up from my desk, took my bag, stood 1 step from him. Give me time, I said. He nodded, immediately, without negotiation. As much as you need, I left. Outside, a light January rain was falling, cold, almost icy. I didn't call a car. I walked. I needed air. I needed to walk and think. I thought all the way home, thought about how some things are easy to distinguish from the outside, right and wrong, and how some things become much more complicated when you are inside them. I thought about how I didn't want to destroy anyone's family, never wanted that. I thought about how wants sometimes arise where you don't expect them, and that their arising doesn't make you a bad person, but what you do with them does. I thought about him, about how he said too late, about how he didn't pressure, didn't persuade, just told the truth and asked what I wanted. I reached home, went inside, turned on the light, sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea I didn't drink. On my phone, nothing. He hadn't written, as promised. He was waiting. I sat for a long time, then took out my phone, opened his name and my contacts, looked at it for a long time, typed one word. Tomorrow. 3 seconds. His reply, what time? I typed the time, then set my phone down, finished the cold tea. Outside the window, rain fell. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know how this would end. I only knew one thing, that some stories begin before you've had a chance to decide whether you want them or not, and that tomorrow I would go. Because not going was also a decision. Both choices had a price. I chose the price I could carry. That was my choice, and I was prepared to own it.